if you, obviously all of you read my email because you made it here, but today is the last Life on Tap for the semester, and we are trying something brand new. So we are going to do a panel this time instead of having two speakers speaking to you individually. And today we are also trying something new in that they are not necessarily going to talk about their careers. Hopefully you'll mention the jobs that you have, I've got it in your bio, but they are here to really talk to you about what is it actually like to graduate and leave Christendom, because that is a lot of you all want to know about that, and that is a fear that you have. What actually happens? What's next? How do we navigate these things? So I have a set of, I actually have 9 questions, but we don't have to get to all of these. I want to hear from you all. So raise your hand in the middle of this. If you think of a question, feel free to stop us. Please don't yell and like really stop us, but just raise your hand and we can address the questions that you all have. Sound good? Okay, you guys are still afraid to sit in the front row. How many times have we been doing this? Promise I don't bite. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to introduce our wonderful panelists. Thank you all for coming. I don't know how far everybody had to drive, but 2 of you were local. Yeah. Not far. The other 2 is a little bit, so thank you for making it here. So first we have Laura Cermak, who graduated in 2019. She majored in political science and works full-time in marketing for education abroad. In 2019, she partnered with a Christian fashion designer to found True Style, a nonprofit providing resources and mentorship for girls to understand their feminine genius, especially through the art of fashion. Laura also tutors Latin, sings in her parish choir, leads multiple reading groups, and participates in the Sent Fellowship for Catholic Entrepreneurs. So, welcome, Laura. Next, we have Joe Peters, who also graduated in 2019. He is the office manager at Timberworks Tree Care. Joseph graduated with a BA in English and immediately started working for Timberworks upon graduation. Since graduation, he has taken online marketing classes with University of Vermont and is looking to pursue further studies in digital marketing. He also recently got married. So he might be able to provide a tiny bit of insight on that too. All right, and then next we have Emily Hall. Emily graduated last year in 2020. She loves trucks, horses, and works at a stable on the weekends. But she also works as a business analyst for Soul Solutions Incorporated. She finds that her eye for detail and the problem-solving skills she developed as a math major help her immensely in her job of understanding and improving the business processes of HHS offices. I'm going to have to give us an explanation of that. So, welcome, Emily. And then finally we have Shane McCrum, who also graduated in 2019. He is a foreign military sales analyst for Parsons Corporation, currently working with the Missile Defense Agency. After graduating with a BA in history, he has worked in the defense contracting world for various DoD agencies. Shane is currently pursuing a master's in international commerce policy with George Mason University. So, welcome to our panelists. Okay, I'm going to hold it for now on. Is that better? Yeah, okay. Oh, if you all can unmute, we are testing out brand new microphones here, so can you all just say hello to make sure first? Okay?
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Yes. I think we should be good. Can everybody hear? Oh. Okay. Hopefully we will not have too much of that. Yes, possibly. Does our tech person
just have like one person turn on
mute? We can try that. They should. Okay. All right. We're gonna try. All right. Okay, everybody. So I'm gonna get it started with a pretty hard-hitting question that I think a lot of you might not know that you need to know. So, what do you wish you had known before graduating and starting a full-time job that they don't currently know? Go ahead. Yep.
Honestly, probably my horrible college sleep schedules that have ruined my first 2 months as a career. No, I'm just kidding. Probably, I wish I planned my budget before it all started. I had never had these big of bills before, and I never had that big of a paycheck before, so I really didn't know what I was doing with my money. And so I just kind of went into it, and at the beginning, I barely spent anything, like borderline starved myself with no groceries. I was scared that I was gonna run out, but after a while, I realized my bank account was going pretty high, and I was like, oh, I can spend a little more. Then I went the opposite extreme. I spent way too much money, and honestly, if I just looked at all my bills, all of the things that I needed to pay for before I started, then it would have worked out really fine. And I did that probably 2 months in, and since then, haven't even really had to look at my accounts too much.
Anybody else?
I have an insight, it's not super great or anything, but just on like the Catholic community, I think that's something people take for granted here at Christendom. And just realize it's something you're not going to have, and it's something you should think about, like when you're looking at your location, like with the churches nearby and stuff, and see if you have friends in the area. It's just like the friends I know who have like gone out on their own and done their own thing. It's like it's just a struggle. If you don't, like, you're just not always going to have a support group around you. So it's important to like look at those things when you're moving to a location or even a job for that matter.
Ladies?
Yeah, kind of connected with that. There's definitely in the Catholic DC sphere, there can be a bit of FOMO. There's quite a lot actually that goes on. When you're in Front Royal, there's a limited number of activities that you can commit yourself to. And as someone who overcommitted themselves a little bit even at Christendom, not to be overwhelmed by the wealth of resources that Dominican House of Studies or the Catholic Information Center or these other kinds of institutions offer. Plus now everything's virtual, so it just is multiplied tenfold. I would encourage everyone to be more ruthless with saying no to things, and you'll improve your overall mental well-being, and you'll discover like what you're really interested in. You know, you might go out on a limb every now and then, but it's okay not to attend every kind of optional lecture that's out there.
Could you please explain the term FOMO?
Fear of missing out. Yep.
All right, so mine is much more kind of practical speaking. I wish I knew a lot more about how health insurance works and life insurance and like how that all, like to look for a company that has a good 401k matching program. Like these are all things that I learned. And luckily I have a really great company that has like basically has me covered, so I didn't have to go in and be like, oh, they don't have the health insurance I need or whatever. But I'm still learning about that as I'm working, and working with my parents have been great help. Taxes too. I just had my first tax season officially as a graduated working professional, so that was another learning curve. But basically a lot of paperwork, how to handle the paperwork of life, which I knew a little bit more of.
Thank you, that is very helpful as I'm planning more stuff for you guys. Yes, Joseph?
So, did most of you kind of, I guess, where did you move out to after you moved around to? Did you move to a different state? Did you kind of stay where you were, or, you know, around family? What did that look like, housing-wise?
I moved into a house with like a bunch of other Catholic guys in the Falls Church, Arlington area at first, and then just moved to like Colonial Beach, Virginia. So now I'm kind of out in my life, got my own house. So now I'm kind of doing my own thing.
So I went back home to Wisconsin for a few months, and then got a job down here and moved down. So I'm completely away from all family, not friends, but family. And I kind of did the same for housing situation. Started living with a group of Catholic girls in town, and I'm moving into an apartment next week. Woo! So excited. So, yeah.
I just stick around here. I'm from around here, so I went home for maybe like 3 weeks and then moved out with some friends. And yeah, been around ever since. And then I just moved in with my wife in Stephen City.
We knew that was coming. Laura, did you want to share anything?
Sure. I bought an apartment in Roslyn, which is really just outside of Georgetown, and then was living there for about a year. When COVID hit, I decided to move back in with my folks, so I'm looking for something else. want to rent it out. Anyone's graduating this But no, I'm living with my folks now and was working in Arlington just on the Orange Line. Now working remotely, which I love and would love to talk about more.
Yeah, that would be great to hear about. Okay, let's talk about something else, and we'll come back to remote working because that would be fascinating to hear. So we kind of asked this question of all of our Life on Tap speakers, but what activities did you do on campus that actually proved to be very beneficial now that you're out in the real world? And you can interpret beneficial however you like.
Personally, I didn't do too many activities on campus, but my main one was rugby, I guess, and yeah, that keeps you very disciplined and keeps me going to the dentist. Thank you, Owen. But yeah, it definitely keeps me disciplined, kept me going to the gym, and I think that's very important.
I definitely think the education, obviously, but specifically the writing and research skills have helped me a lot in my career. Just I know people say a lot of Christendom is it's repeated often that people don't know how to write out there, but it is really true. Like people don't know how to write, so that's really helpful. And then also just there's a lot of opportunity at Christendom for clubs and taking control of these extracurricular activities and all that stuff you can throw in your resume. It helps you with public speaking. Any of that presentation stuff is all just really helpful for me.
Yeah, I'd echo that. Specific practical skills are when you're running a club and maybe you're designing flyers, sending out emails, those kinds of practical things. I mean, I work in marketing, a few of us work in marketing. You're just going to continue to build those things. Highly recommend maximizing that effort. So I didn't ever do SAC, but I did chamber orchestra and led a couple of reading groups and organized some lectures, including a training session for life advocacy student training. So any of those kinds of events that you all put on, whether that's then budgeting for it, expensing things, all very practical.
All right, so this is a little bit less of an activity, but just something I really tried to do. They were trying to talk to a lot of people, and that has come in very handy for my job because as a business analyst, I'm talking to the clients a lot, and you have to learn how to interact with them and learn how to ask the right questions. So just being able to small talk with people, but also have help in the office. You can have kind of a quiet office, and I'm still working through, breaking through people, but just learning how to talk to a bunch of different people can be really helpful, especially for all of us homeschoolers who are really introverts and dying inside sometimes.
Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing that. All right. Some of you touched on a few of these things, I think, but what were some of your worries and fears moving out into the real world, graduating, finding a job, etc., and how did these kind of end up for you? Hopefully not terribly. Good lesson.
Honestly, I was really nervous that I had no job experience whatsoever. I mean, the jobs I had previously were kind of throwaway college jobs, cashiering and working in the kitchen. Not to say that your job is little if you work in the kitchen, but just not very transferable skills, or so I thought. And I didn't think Christendom was really adding to my career or finding a career. I didn't think that this education was going to give me any of these skills. But then I found out that it wasn't really about them training you how to do specific jobs, because they can't train you how to do every possible job. They don't know what you're going to do when you graduate. And it's more about them teaching you how to learn how to learn, basically. And it's like my little brother. He's a mechanical engineering student at Virginia Tech, and he has not done any hands-on stuff whatsoever, because they can't teach him how to build an airplane, build HVAC units. They can't do all that because it's a very broad career, but they're giving him the capacity to learn these skills. And so once he finds a job, he knows all the math and science behind it, and so he'll be ready. And that's kind of how Christendom turned out. I basically used LinkedIn Learning to learn how to do my job, but other than that, I got in there and I figured it out very quickly, and I overcame that fear, so yeah.
So So one of my fears was being tied down to a job for the rest of my life. Like at college, you have 2 summers off, and 3 months where you don't have to be somewhere and do something necessarily. So I was really not looking forward to being tied down to a 9-to-5 job 5 days a week. I do have a 9-to-5 job, kind of 5 days a week, but I do have flexibility where I can come in between 7 and 10, as long as I get 8 hours in. It doesn't really matter exactly what time. So that has been really nice and has eased the fear of being tied down. But also, you do get time off. It is a thing in the professional world. So you choose it wisely, and then you use your evenings and your weekends. Your weekends become a lot more special, I think, once you get out and get out of full-time job. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Yes, federal holidays are the best.
It's like literally nobody cares about Columbus Day until you're like a professional. It's like,
Giving a random day in October off is very nice, yes.
yeah, I would say echo what Joe said. Just like fear of failure was really big for me. Like, I was like graduating, and I was like, I need to have a job like the next day. Like I was like freaking out, and I feel like that was Joe was saying is like just be scrappy and just stick with it, and like you'll find a job, and then when you get that job, you'll teach yourself the job. Like just be independent and just work through it. And yeah, one mistake I kind of made was that like don't take like the first job that comes your way. Like if you keep interviewing, keep networking and stuff, you'll have lots of opportunities. You don't need to like take your first job from like whatever. I don't want to disparage any companies, but like you know, just like if McDonald's offers you a job, don't like take that because it looks bad and quit that job within the first month if you get a better job. You know, because you want to have at least a year in a career in the job before you leave. So yeah, that's what I would say. Just don't freak out if you don't have a job like the day after graduation. Maybe if you're not employed for like 6 months, maybe that should be worth. But
So yeah, I didn't really have to worry too much about a job because I had one lined up before graduation, but then, you know, COVID hit, right? And I was cut down to like 20% for a while, and then we went back up to 50% a few months later, and then it was only in August that I went back to full time, so that was definitely a time of uncertainty. Whatever uncertainty like you experience, whether that's right after graduation or between career changes, I think the key is to have a solid foundation in your spiritual life, to have kind of a rule of life, and it's still something that I'm working on all of the time, but that's something that I took for granted at Christendom, daily mass, and I've tried to keep up a little bit. Lent can help to, you know, continue to revise some of these resolutions and whatnot, but at the very least making time for some mental prayer in the morning and just reminding yourself that your work is not not the whole of your vocation, and not identifying yourself too much with the product that you put out or the company that's on your resume, but really just maximizing the time that you have. If I were to recommend any one particular like book, as far as this goes, whether you're doing intellectual work like journalism or going to grad school or what have you, it would be The Intellectual Life by Antonin Sirleon. Highly recommend.
And that's not surprising that you would recommend a book since you run a lot of reading groups. We all have to look into that. So you started to touch on this, and so I'm going to combine kind of two of the questions that I had. But how do you keep your faith alive? And how do you find that community? Shane, you talked a little bit about that at the beginning. But what kinds of things are you involved in, and how are you finding them? How are you finding that community?
I'll go first. So I am incredibly blessed that my office is literally across the street from the church. So I leave the office and walk across the street to daily mass and come back to work. And it's the most amazing things. I knew when I left Christendom I would lose my daily mass, and I have not lost my daily mass yet. So that's been incredible. And there's the Adoration Chapel right there as well. So I always try to pray there. The pregnancy center is right next to my work. So I'm going to start volunteering there. And then there's also a young adult group run by St. John's that I've started to get involved with. So that's kind of basically how I've structured my day is structured to church right there. And I haven't had to try very hard. So let's ask the others who probably have to try a little harder than I do.
I've pretty much stayed in the community, so a lot of my friends and family are Christian alumni, and so they're always keeping me close with God, and actually some of the people that really know me in here, they know My faith has improved a lot since I graduated college, and that's a lot to do with my friends. And so, what I do to maintain it, I did Access 90 last year, which was very, very helpful. I think that's good for all college guys to do right after college. Not even spiritually, for health reasons. Like you have a lot of habits that are starting to form, and to go 90 days without that stuff is very, very good for you.
Yeah, a few things that I've gotten to practice since graduating. I found a spiritual director finally. That's been something that had been on the back burner for literally years, and then finally just decided, wait, I've been too afraid to ask my own pastor if he could be my spiritual director, and he said yes, and so that's been really incredible. I would recommend finding a spiritual director, whether that's a priest you know or just someone in your life who's trained in that way, a missionary or something like this. And then also intermittent fasting has been something that I've really, really enjoyed. There's a book called Eat, Fast, Feast. I'm just going to give lots of book recommendations. By Dr. Jay Richards, who actually came and spoke at Christendom for Cincinnati's Legal a while back, and really transformative. Just kind of marry these kind of health things that you're talking about, Joe, with the liturgical year, and really trying to live, eat, fast, and feast in accord with the church's tradition over thousands of years, which is really cool. And then also tying in with like the taking time off. Take a day off for spiritual retreat. Don't just use your days off for going to the beach. Like go to a monastery, or like go to a retreat house or something. You won't regret it. Just do that maybe once a year, once every 6 months, but especially in a stressful time like this, you won't regret it.
Does anybody in the audience have a question right now before I go on to a couple others? Oh, over in the front. Oh, well, did you want to share, Shane?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I have a question. So you're doing grad program right now. Did you choose that through the Department of Defense, or is this something you're doing on your own? Or like, how does it correlate with your job?
Yeah, so it's for my job. I did pick it, and yeah, this is one thing I would say: don't jump right into grad school after you go to your bachelor's degree. I would definitely say get a job and try to get them to pay for it, because they're paying for like half of my school. So yeah, it's not like through a DD program, and they have those, but it is like a full-time job. So
They're paying for it?
they're paying for like half of it. So at least, I mean, if you can get it paid fully, that's sweet. But yeah, you should at least be able to get the company. Most companies pay for like at least half, sometimes less. So I would say do that if you're trying to get into grad school and you don't have parents with deep pockets.
Joseph?
So I guess just from your own first-hand experience, what about EFL helped you the most, and does it actually work?
Okay. Joseph, thank you so much, because that was actually number 8. I was going to ask that. So EFL is what you all had as ELP. So Education for Life program. It's now just Education for Life. So EFL. So yes, I would love to know, did you take advantage of what EFL had to offer? What you learned in those classes? Was it impactful? Does it work?
Yeah. Woo! EFL.
I don't know why people always complain about ELP so much, because there's like 4 of them. It improves your GPA like crazy.
Yeah, Joe. You win.
Actually, I think ELP was one of the only C's I got.
But I do think it was like really helpful. I really enjoyed the ones at the beginning, the psychology ones and stuff like that. But honestly, I think I use a lot of the career center and ELP a lot more now that I graduated. I Kristen all the time, giving her companies that need employees, and I use, like I said, I use LinkedIn Learning, literally how to train myself to do my job. And so I think you should definitely take advantage of it, because that's the one course that you take at Christendom that will show you what you should do after you graduate. We can't explain everything right now, so take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think it's good too. I agree. It was really good for interviewing practices. I don't know if you still did that one exercise where you like write out all of your potential interview questions. That helped me like a ton. And also resume writing. It obviously won't get you the job. That's up to you. But it was good for me for sure.
If you're not a senior, you haven't done the interview assignment yet, but you will have to write out your responses to the top 10 interview questions. And sophomores and above now all have a resume, so they're all set for that. We've made some changes since you all went through it.
Yeah, I'll echo Joe. It was really helpful. I know everyone else was like, oh, really? God. No, it was super helpful. I had a resume ready to go that I could just tweak. I totally used career development, and the personality, you can think that's a little weird or whatever, but my interview for the job I'm in now, one of the first things he asked me was, what's your personality like? What are your 4 letters? And I couldn't remember. So I took the test again, and the second interview, I was like, I have it. This is what I am. So some employers do care. It's good to know who you are because they want people to match, and there is some science behind it. So yeah, I found it like budgeting, just refinancing your loan. That was something I didn't know about. My parents didn't even know about that. So thank you, Mr. Bradley, for bringing that up. And yeah, 100% behind it. Sorry guys, if you didn't like it, but it's very helpful.
You could be one of our spokespeople.
One thing to add is that, try again. Mrs. Stevens helped me a lot with salary negotiation. I remember that was kind of a stressful period, but that was extremely helpful. So if you're in a position of wanting to negotiate salary, highly recommend going to Mrs. Stevens for advice with that.
All right, Joseph, does that give you the confidence to continue in EFL? Thank you for the question. Thank you. Anthony.
We talked about community and kind of like that accountability. How have you guys kind of maintained friendships, close friendships of like, male friendships, female friendships, people that you see when you're not working, or people that you have a good accountable relationship with that might not be spiritual?
A good friend of mine kind of put it in terms of wanting to make sure that you're maintaining relationships on 3 different levels. The mentor relationship, the peer relationship, and then the mentee relationship. So you want to make sure that these all are balanced, and they won't be equal throughout your whole life. But we'll call the mentors the Pauls, the peers the Barnabases, and then the mentees the Timothys, right? So making sure that you make time for each of those in your life. And for me, what was easy was the peer thing, actually, because of being involved in different reading groups or the debate society in DC that's just starting as kind of a spin-off of ISI and some other things like Chester Bellocq. So those were easier for me, but the mentee thing was harder for people that are already involved in volunteering places. That might be easier, or who do, maybe they teach or they babysit or these kinds of things. It's easier. For me, I needed to make some time to spend with my confirmation sponsees, or to start this nonprofit True Style, to really invest in girls who are at the high school level. And then mentors too, making sure that you cultivate those. Maybe that's by joining, like going to these kinds of resources that are free, lectures and whatnot, or joining more like professional, young professional groups that then have guest speakers who you might call on as mentors, and then keeping in touch with professors too. I mean, keeping in touch with your professors isn't just for people who go to grad school and need recommendations, right? It's this is, hopefully kind of a longer term thing that we really are blessed to have here at Small.
After you graduate, I feel like just everybody, all the Christendom alumni kind of in your area, you become naturally better friends with, but you can definitely maintain relationships with people that are far away. One of my best friends is Bernie, who's deployed right now, Tim Mara. We've been emailing ever since he left, so you can definitely maintain those friendships too.
So keeping with friends is something I struggle with a bit once I basically moved from Wisconsin here. And then I was super focused on my job. I also have a horse who takes up a lot of my time. So, but one of my good friends who lives nearby, Isabel Riley, who still works here, she doesn't have a full kitchen in her apartment. So I'm like, girl, you gotta eat. You really gotta eat. So I started having my friends over for dinner once a week. and that's my thing, is I feed people. So I feed them, I feed my coworkers once a week, I feed other people. That's mainly how I make sure my friends are in my life. So it's the first step. I still need to work on the other two that you mentioned, the mentee and then the mentor, but that's how it started.
He wants to be fed. Shane, did you have anything to add?
I'm good.
Okay. Other questions? I thought I saw full hands. Yes.
It didn't seem like it was a real shoot. So what is like the risk of that? Because I feel like it's a big thing that college students are super stressed about. There's also all
If you couldn't hear him, he was asking about money and feeling like they seem put together and confident in their finances at the moment. So, just want to share.
Yeah, it's pretty hard, but like not the way you think it's hard. It's more like she was saying, with like figuring out healthcare and taxes and like how to invest and all those things. And like Joe was saying, also budgeting, like all that stuff's hard. So it is hard. But I guess what I would say is try to like emancipate yourself as soon as you can when you graduate, and like do everything you can to become independent and just jump right into it. Like there's no point in like putting these things off, because the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be. So like if you're on your parents' healthcare, I would honestly recommend getting off it like as soon as you can and just getting your own healthcare, because like I said, it's just going to get harder the longer you wait. Even investing too, like it's just better to start even if it's very small. It's just better to just get in and just do it, because you're not going to learn about it. Like watching a YouTube video isn't going to teach you about like how to manage your money. So you just kind of got to learn like this.
So I'm going to push back a little bit and I'm saying about the staying in your parents' healthcare. So I totally agree with you going. For me, what I did first is I wrote out a budget. Like when I applied for the job that I'm working now, I went to my dad. I'm like, Dad, can I afford this job, this salary with what I have? And we worked out a budget, and we said, yes, I can do this job with my college payments, with everything. But I mean, most of you haven't seen, but I drive a super beat up car right now, and that's because college debt is the first thing I'm getting off my list, and then the car comes next. So in that case, staying on my parents' insurance can be helpful, because then I'm stocking out that debt, and then moving forward with that. But if you can, totally do it. Get as independent as you can. I would love to be independent. I'm still a little dependent on my parents right now, which is not something I'm super happy about. But it's because the debt's the first goal, and then we're working towards complete independence.
Oh, that's really smart, because I bought my dream car during my spending period. But no, you definitely get used to it, and I figure out you can. What I do is I have all my money, all the bills auto transferred, so they're automatically paid, and I know exactly how much that is happening each month, how much is leaving my account, and then I have another account where my spending money comes in, and then another account where my essential money, and it all auto transfers. And so I never actually have to worry about it, because I'm spending exactly what's allotted for that day.
Another tip is, what always would surprise me is these kind of one-time expenses. So for me, like the real estate tax that is like, $700, but only twice a year. So it's just long enough for you to forget about it. And then it's like, oh, cash flow's a thing. So what I would recommend is get ahead of these things and then budget, like spread it out over the year, so that you set aside kind of like a pot that's just for taxes, car maintenance or repairs, depending on your vehicle. Just always have a buffer, but know exactly when you'll be using that buffer too. Like have it on a calendar or use a budgeting app that allows you to schedule in transactions.
You guys are learning from each other. Other questions? Yeah, Joe.
So like going back to like the interview process and stuff. So I know, Shane, you work in defense contracting and you were a history major. And so like, I don't know, like as a history major, how do you show your interviewer that you're able to like fulfill the duties that the job requires,
Yeah, good question. I'm trying to remember exactly. So my first job I took was for like a pretty low-level analyst position, like I said. So, I mean, they were looking for like liberal arts grads, or not necessarily looking for, but there was no like specific technical expertise they needed. So that was pretty easy. I mean, I guess I just showed them that I had like a very can-do attitude, and I had experience in a professional environment. And then my second job, I'm more in like a financial position now, and that was like a little bit of a harder sell. Like I didn't have like a ton of financial experience or anything. So there's a little bit of, you gotta like not make up, but like you have to sell yourself. And I guess just keep showing them that you have a can-do attitude, I guess. Is what I'd say. I don't know. Maybe I should come back to that question.
Do you all have thoughts on that as well, as kind of selling yourself as a liberal arts grad versus I majored in marketing and now I want to work in marketing?
Yeah, most of the coworkers that I had when I first started at ABL, the education abroad company, they had studied business, or, I mean, they were all interested in the great books, and that was the kind of the culture that I was attracted to in the first place, right? But a lot of them went to like Grove City and did business or entrepreneurship or things like this, and in like the 10-hour-long interview process that I had, that was maybe the number one question that my now boss, the CEO, had for me, was like, prove to me that you actually want to do business and you don't want to just go to grad school and read books. And I'm like, well, I do. Yeah, I love reading books, but I can promise you I don't want to go to grad school. I'm not just going to leave you after a year and a half or whatever. And that was showing them how the specific internships and work experiences that I had like prepared me to do that job. Whether that was in marketing, digital production, but mostly like taking charge of things. And so going back to like what activities you're involved in, think about how to transfer those skills into whatever job that you're applying towards. So that might be something like managing a team of people, right? That is a universally transferable skill. Or managing communications for a particular event, or budgeting. These are the kinds of skills that are the soft skills that you transfer. So really kind of reflect on those, and then be able to show in your interview very specific anecdotes, if you can, numbers and results. Say that you took the orchestra budget from being $250 a semester to like X times that or something, and how you did it, and like the number of people that you brought together, and then talk about this. Yes, I see. They paid for helping me. It was something though that I got to talk about in my interview. It was like orchestra stuff. So, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And so I guess to add on that, going back to what we were saying earlier, is like this is a place where you can say that you've organized those things. So these are things you should be thinking of now as like juniors and sophomores and even seniors, and being like, what like little things can I do that I can like use in an interview or add to my resume? Because like she's saying, those soft skills are really important, and you're gonna have to like sell your employer on those, not necessarily like your technical skills as a liberal arts grad.
In the throes kind of senior year and with papers and stuff like that, when did you guys find the time to apply for jobs? Did you do that during your senior year? Did you do that after your senior year? And just, I mean, in general, how did you motivate yourself to just solely apply for jobs while busy with other things?
Yeah, well, I set up my classes like specifically so that my last semester was like my easiest semester for that reason. So yeah, that's what I would do. Like, don't lease your last semester. Try to take the easiest classes you can. I had like a part-time internship, so I was like 1 foot out the door. So I would recommend that.
Yeah, I did the same with Shane. I just didn't stack my last semester too heavy, and I started applying in December. And I eventually just started talking to my friend, and he got me a job.
Yeah, no, it was all networking, right? I mean, I just went to a company happy hour in June before senior year, fell in love with the company, interviewed in July, heard back in October, and that was that. Like, that's it gives you a lot of peace of mind if you can line up your job before going into second second semester. But it's a lot of networking. What I would also recommend is subscribe to any job list emails you can. Like for me, typically it was the Heritage Job Bank email that I would continue to get every other day or so from when I interned there. And you just kind of keep a pulse on what jobs open up, but there's actually no shortage of jobs, at least in the DC area.
Emily, did you have a different experience?
Yes. So I was a math major, so I had the thesis in the spring, and I did not really look for jobs until after I graduated. Thankfully, so I was living at home because we were all back because of COVID, and my parents were super supportive and don't worry about it. Finish your school, finish strong, look for them afterwards. I did have part-time jobs that I worked over the summer that I could fall back on if I needed to, but then I got serious about looking for a job. And I think depending on your personality, but I'm a pretty hard charger, so I'm like, I need this, I'm gonna get it, we're gonna do it. And then networking, we're gonna go back to networking. I have a fun story with that. I don't want to share it here if it's not ready, but
Yeah, go for it.
okay, so networking, you're always kind of like, it sounds kind of superficial, right? You're like, you're just trying to make friends to get a job, whatever, but when I had a friend who applied for this internship that I ended up working later, and she told me, hey, I applied for this, but I talked to a guy and actually it's not going to work out, but you'd be great for this, it's in Virginia. And she said, I told them you're going to apply. So I gave them your name, you need to apply. And I was like, okay, fine, maybe. So when I looked it up and things worked out, because it was in Virginia, not in Wisconsin, so I thought, okay, I'll apply for this. So I sent in my resume, didn't hear back for a week. Meanwhile, I was calling around, finding a place to live, finding a place for my horse, I had almost everything lined up. And I called the landlady, and I'm like, I haven't heard back, and she goes, oh, who you applied to? And I said, Greg Bodo at SSI. She goes, oh, I know the Bodos, I'm a great friend with his wife. I was like, hey, give him a nudge for me, because I haven't heard back. She said, sure, I'll text his wife right now. So then on LinkedIn, I get a message from the manager. He's like, hey, I heard you're interested in SSI, send us your resume if you're interested. And I was like, I did say I did a week ago. I just said, sure, here's my resume. They never got my application. But because two people said, hey, Emily Palm wants to apply for this job, they looked up Emily Palm and like, hey, you want this job? And that's how I got the job.
Awesome, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that was actually one of my questions that I wanted to go towards is how do you guys continue networking? Did you find your job through networking? Tell them about networking and why it's important, and it's not just this made-up thing of, trying to make friends to get a job.
I guess I kind of found hooked up in networking. It was a friend of mine, but it wasn't like I applied for it on a career website or anything like that. But I think you definitely have to get it out of your head, the idea of networking. My first week on the job, my boss brought me to this group called BNI. It's a business networking group, and basically told me to network and then walked out. And I was a 22-year-old, first week on the job. The youngest other person there was 30-something, and then everybody else was 60 or higher. I was like, why do I do this? But it's because I thought I had nothing to offer them. Like, I was going up to these people thinking I needed to give them something, and they had to give me something. I thought that's what networking was. But it's not. You literally are just talking, making friends with these people, and after I got over myself and just talked to them, became friends with them, I started giving them referrals all the time. It came up every week or so. And every time I still meet with some of these people to the day, even people not in the group, and we grab beers, and a week later I pass them a referral, they pass me one. And that's how networking really works. It's not this weird thing that like you have to provide something for them. You just talk to them, become friends with them.
Very true. Yeah, networking is literally everything. Like, I don't know anybody that just gets jobs, like, off of job postings with no reference like that. Very vast minority, I would say. But like Joe said, it's not weird. It's not like an exchange of goods, like some people say it is. Like, it's literally just, you meet people, you get drinks with them, don't get drunk with them, but like literally, like, have a good time, get a few beers. Like, it's about like making a personal connection with people. And then other thing is, it doesn't end when you get your job. Like, you keep networking with your coworkers. Like, when you're at an employee event, like a Christmas party or something, you make a point to go meet the president, the vice president. Like, that's networking too. Like you said, it's just like kind of hanging out, getting good impression. But yeah, it can be fun, and it's really important.
Yeah, making the personal connections can be tough, especially if you're doing it a lot. You can kind of get fatigued. So one thing that I found helpful is to actually keep like a note on my phone on a note app. And just after I go to a networking event or a reception, I'll write down the person's name and a couple of just facts about them. Things we talked about, things they were interested in, or if they had a really exciting event coming up that they mentioned, or maybe they were going on vacation soon, or their brother was getting married or something like this. That way, I might not see them again. But if I do come across them again at a reception and I catch them out of the corner of my eye, I can sneak a look at my phone and be like, oh yeah, I can ask them about this. And you know what's crazy is that they'll really appreciate it. They'll never suspect that you did it in this kind of artificial way. It's not actually like that sneaky thing to do, because the fact that you actually went out of your way to do it tells them that you care. And you're just using this as a kind of an external mind, as it were. So don't be afraid to take notes on conversations.
Awesome, thank you all. Yes, Anthony, again.
Sorry.
That's great.
I have a lot of
You've
questions.
got
So
good
I'm a
questions.
second semester senior, so I have a lot of questions. This is getting really real for me. But Shane, you talked about kind of holding out on getting a good job. How long would you? Sorry, I'm trying to think how to phrase it. Would you wait till another job kind of offers itself or lines up before you kind of decide to go after that one? I don't know how to phrase what I'm saying. What I mean is, how long would you recommend to hold out for a better job if you have kind of a stable one lined up?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's really hard to say. There's no like time frame, I would say, but I guess my mistake that I made is, like I said, I was very eager to get a job right away, and I had a couple offers, and I took one of them within like the first week of graduating, and it was fine. It worked out fine. I stayed there for a year and moved on to a cooler job, which I like now. So like it was fine. It wasn't a huge mistake. But I guess in retrospect, looking back, is like I was in the middle of like networking, interviewing. Like I could have, if you don't have any job offers, if you don't have any future interviews lined up, then like, and you get a good stable job, then yeah, maybe take it. But I'm saying like, if you're kind of like in the zone and you're getting interviews and you're talking to people and you get a job in your offer, you don't need to take that first one. I guess was my point was. But don't be like, oh, if this is my first job offer, I can't take it. Like, if it's a good job, like go for it. So, yeah.
Yes.
Do you feel like you have the same job opportunities and experience compared to someone from a bigger school?
If anything, I think you have more, because at Christendom, like so many Christendom alumni started their own companies, and all you have to do is go on their career website, and there's a list of all of them. Like, we're looking for a salesman right now, we want someone unexperienced, so give me a call and you'll get an interview. But yeah, there's so many opportunities, and they all want to offer Christendom students jobs, but I have friends that are going to bigger schools where they don't know anybody, they don't even know if they have a career development office. So, that's what you gotta use your connections, what we're talking about, networking.
Cassie, yes.
You with the blue shirt. So you said that
Name's
when
Joe.
What's it?
Joe.
Joe, you said you kind of got involved in a lot of superfluous spending when you first got a job and everything. So I just have a quick question. What's the stupidest, most unnecessary thing? And most expensive, like.
Probably my car.
What kind of car is it?
Jeep Renegade.
Knew it.
Thank you, Cassie.
You're welcome.
Other questions? This is your time to ask them. Anybody? Yes.
Are you happy with where you are career-wise, or are you hoping to get a promotion or move on to something bigger?
I feel like you're always looking for a promotion, getting a raise, obviously, but I'm very happy with where I am, and there's so much potential at my job. I can take over tasks whenever I want, and My boss will just keep paying me more depending on how much I do, and so there's no limit there. And yeah, maybe 5 years down the road or so, I'll be looking for another job. But I don't know. As of now, I have no immediate plan to leave.
Yeah, kind of same. So I started on a support team and now I'm business analyst. So it was a huge learning curve the first 3 months. And then as soon as I got the hang of it, they're like, okay, new thing, completely different. So I'm still learning. And I think that's really important in your job. I have a colleague who's like, if I'm not learning, then I need to move on. And I think that's what you need to look for. And right now I'm still learning. I mean, I'm not even a year into this job yet. So it kind of boggles my mind to even think about leaving. But I'm also still really developing and moving into becoming useful and actually learning everything about my job and how to do it. So far we're good. Everything's going well. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you'll ever really be like 100% satisfied with your career. Like, I don't know, you're always moving up and always moving on to the next thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm coming up on 2 years in my current job and coming a bit out of a rut, honestly, professionally. I mentioned going down to 20% when COVID hit, and then coming back up to 50 and then 100. And that put a lot of kind of emotional strain that maybe actually had delayed effects in some ways too. The kinds of work that I was doing was not nearly as fulfilling. And for me, I didn't take the time I needed to rejuvenate. So when I was dealing with angry customers or credit card companies or just not having human interaction like I had when I was first in the office and now we're all remote, right? That took a lot of adjustment. And I would just say, take stock, right? There's a really good resource out there called Optimal Work that helps you to kind of measure how you're engaging with your work. Are you really seeing this as an opportunity for growth, for professional development, but also spiritual growth? It's developed by a psychologist or a psychiatrist at Harvard, PhD, and it's absolutely fantastic. Really transformative for me. So there are resources out there for you to kind of self-evaluate to see if you really still are happy where you are. And if you're not, figure out whether that's because of an extrinsic factor or whether that's an intrinsic factor. And for me, you know, I really still do have a lot of the key elements in my job that are making me feel fulfilled, but something had changed internally that I wasn't keeping tabs enough of. So just keep those in mind. There's kind of two sides to that. If you're feeling dissatisfied with your job, try to figure out what can change and whether your own perspective ought to change.
Very good point. Yes. Yes.
How have you found that faith life has carried into your work? As in, like, something that I kind of fear going into the workforce is like my coworkers asking about my political views, or when I'm praying before meals, and you come into contact with kind of these confrontations with your faith life and the professional life, and how you dealt with those.
Nobody talks about politics. I feel like literally like nobody touches that topic right now. I don't know. But it is good to have friends that you work with. Like my last one, I had a really close Catholic friend, so that was good. But no, I've never been like challenged or anything in my work, and yeah, I don't really pursue that.
So right now, I work in a Christendom company. My boss from Christendom, almost everyone in the company from Christendom. But I have worked in several different secular jobs. And it can be a little lonely if you're the only one and you're the only Catholic. But at the same time, people are so curious. And if you're living your life as a Catholic, as a solid Catholic, people see that and they're like, what does he have? What is that? So they ask me, and I tell them, I'm like, this is awesome. Yeah, this is why I do it. Right now, I'm actually talking to a mechanic who I mentioned Lent to. He's like, what is Lent? Tell me all about Lent. So like now, I go and tell him about the Catholic faith, and he's so interested in it. And it's just because I was open about, hey, I'm Catholic. I don't eat on Fridays. It's Lent right now. He's like, hey, what is it? So I just try to really live it and have the friends to support you though, because it can be really hard in an environment where no one else is Catholic that you're living in every day. So having the friends to back up after work is really helpful.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird. I went to a Holy Family and Seton and then Christendom, so I just went right down that stream of all very Catholic conservative people. But it is weird, like when you start talking to business people and some secular or liberal comment comes up and almost takes you by surprise, as you don't really come across it too much. And at Christendom, like if anybody ever said something you disagreed with, you just popped open a beer and had a 10-hour conversation. But in the real world, when you're representing your company, you can't really, it's not really your job in certain circumstances. It depends if you're representing yourself or your company. And if you're talking to a client on the phone and they say they're voting for Biden, you can't be like, hey, don't kill babies. Like, it's not your place in a certain sense, and so you have to kind of learn where to draw the line in it.
Yeah, and then there are times too when you're not necessarily interacting with someone per se on a professional level, but you have the opportunity to have a conversation with someone because you're in a particular place for your job. So I might have, I'm thinking of 2 instances. Like yesterday, I was on a phone call with someone at the Career Services Department at American University, and she clearly was going through like a rough time. She was about to burst into tears on our phone call because her family was going through like bouts of cancer, and she was talking about how, funeral directors these days, they don't know how Zoom works and these kinds of things. So she clearly has like a lot on her mind. This is supposed to be a 10-minute phone call for us to like plan an info session, right? But then she wants to talk about this. And so just your faith, you don't have to mention that you're Catholic, but you're just empathizing. You're just supporting people. There's a lot of brokenness out there. So just really being open to that and seeing what grace God gives you in the moment. Or like I was on a video call with an ambassador from Lebanon that we have who kind of promotes our programs in the Middle East and stuff. And he was talking to me. I mean, we've been having video calls with each other for like every other week for a year, but eventually it comes out that he's got a friend who's cheating and he's helping him to cheat on his exams. And I'm like, basically, hey, Jad, we have a rapport now. Like, you can't do this. Like, you're better than this. I know that you and your friend are smarter than this. You're not actually helping him by cheating. He emailed me afterwards and was like, so we had this conversation and we decided on this other solution where I just help him edit his draft and so forth. So just not being afraid to like call people out once you have a rapport with them, because they respect that and they're like, wow, this person believes that they're holding me to the ideal that I have for myself that I recognize I've fallen short of. So just be bold and you don't need to bring Catholicism into it per se, but just be totally authentic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have any recommendations for training a good quality academy to have to offer without saying something
Sorry, do you mean for like an interview, or what is your question?
She asked basically how do you sell yourself without sounding prideful, correct?
I mean, I think you kind of like prove it in the interview. Like when you say I'm a hard worker, you can't just be like I'm a hard worker, I'm confident, blah blah blah. Well, clearly you're confident, but you kind of have to show it. Like I'm a hard worker, and I can prove this because, and then you give a list of reasons and show it in your life. That's what a cover letter is for too. Mr. McCrum does that thing. I don't know if you still do it, where you take the words that you see in the job description, you put them into your cover letter, and then you describe where or what you did to prove that that was true.
Another point for EFL.
Yes.
Magic words, Joe. Oh, magic words.
I think that can be hard, right? But interviews are the place where you're supposed to sell yourself. So you do have a little more leeway, I think, without coming off as prideful to promote yourself. But I think it also can be in the tone of voice, right? Because I totally did all this and this and this and this. Or you can be like, I did this and this is what I did for this company and this is the orchestra that I organized and this is how I did it. So it can be a lot of tone of voice, but you do have that leeway to promote yourself. Like that's kind of what it is for.
Yeah, definitely just like don't worry too much about promoting yourself. Just don't tell lies, but if it's true and you can back it up like Joe says, then you should feel free to like say good things about yourself. And this also goes to the salary negotiating that we were talking about and your performance reviews, like all that stuff is important to like fight for yourself and not be too like humble. Like as Christians, we're all trying to be humble, but like the interview, your quarterly interview with like your salary manager is not the room to be like humble.
Joseph, did you have one last question?
Oh, yes. So, how did you find, I guess, the dynamic to be entering, you know, this new company, assimilating yourself with the workers, your boss, and just kind of like, you know, it's your first real job. How did that, I guess, change you / I don't know, what's your take?
You definitely have to kind of take the humility blow, like especially, this is the same for like all jobs, there's a huge learning curve. There was this really big learning curve for me in my job, and like I would be kind of used to things being a little easy for me sometimes, I think, but this job was like, I didn't know anything. And you just gotta be used, just get used to asking questions and not feeling bad, or you can feel bad but still ask it and be like, I know this is dumb, but I really don't know, can you help me out? And you do have to try to be outgoing and to just take it all in and really work hard at kind of getting to know the company and just launch yourself in. I'm an introvert, so I didn't always want to talk to people, but you just kind of just go for it and be willing to put yourself out there. And so just ask questions, just try to learn as much as you can. I had a couple of coworkers who I really admired because they were some of the busiest people in the company, but they made time to just ask you out for coffee, like, or they'll ask a random person in the office out for coffee, maybe once or twice a week, like nothing crazy, but they took that time just to build relationships with other people. So even when you're, trying to ask a ton of questions and absorb lots of things, and you're feeling like totally overwhelmed, don't be afraid to take that time.
It's actually also, it's totally typical to fail like on your first day and your first month, and it's good to try things. In my experience, supervisors like it better if you just go try to do it and mess it up than try to get then keep pestering them about how do I do this exactly to do it right the first time. You're gonna mess up when you're doing something for the first time. That's okay.
Yes.
Maybe to follow up that I just a little bit now. Have you ever had a coworker who was difficult to get along with, and how did you deal with that?
I really like to be as professional as possible. Just never write an email with any tone in it. That's what I would say. Never give any sass in an email. And I don't care if you're getting sass back. Just try to be as professional as you can. And because ultimately, that's their fault if they're going to be sassy. Yeah, I've had tons of coworkers that are hard to deal with, and that's it's going to happen. And you just have to try to take emotion out of it and just be as objective and professional as you can.
You guys work with perfect coworkers,
Yeah.
right? Everything's perfect. All Christendom people, yeah. Wonderful. All right, well, I'm just going to finish up with one last question, and hopefully you all will stay after to chat with people individually. I'm sure they'll network. Yes, we can do our own little networking thing here. Okay, last question is really, what is kind of the one piece of advice that you would leave with them? Different maybe than what you wish you would have known before you graduated, but now that you're out there, what piece of advice would you give them?
I already used my answer for that one, but
Yeah.
I think you should just talk to Kristen and try and find these jobs because they're out there. I know at least 4 Christendom alumni companies that are looking for employees right now. So if you don't have a job, reach out to me, even or reach out to Kristen, and you can find one pretty easily.
Yeah, like Joe said, use your network, use your Christendom network, and don't sell yourself short. Like, don't think that because you're a Christian grad, you're not going to be able to make like X amount of money, or you're not going to be able to get whatever job. You can do a lot of cool things with this job, with your degree, so don't sell yourself short.
So I'd say don't stress about it too much. Like, work hard, do what you need to do to find a job, apply, do all the right things. But in the end, just commend it to God. When I get worried about things, or I'm like, I don't know if I want this job, is it going to work out? I'm like, look, God, if you want me here, if this is what you want me to do, it'll work out. And that's going to be really, really calming, because I can get stressed, anxiety is definitely a thing. So just do your work, cover your bases, and then commend it to God, and don't stress too much about it.
And then when you do succeed beyond your wildest dreams, just thank everybody that helped you get there.
Yes.
All right, we'll give our panelists a huge round of applause.